Right. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, clearly, thanks for joining us on a sunny afternoon. I think this is the first of one of the FA's hot topic webinars that we've pulled together. So over the coming weeks, there's quite a series of these events that we've been working on. So hopefully we've got something of interest to everybody. And we can set the standard quite high for the other events that's going to follow us in the next couple of weeks. Just recognising one or two people that's logging in. I think we're going to have a really broad spectrum of people working in different parts of the game. So that's been part of our thinking in what we've pulled together for the next 90 minutes. We've got. I think real key thing. What we want to do is people to share, some of the thoughts and to try and think about what we're talking about, how it applies for you in your environment and in your situation. So, we're going to talk about some of our experiences with the different England teams that we've been working with over a period of time. Some of that will be, hopefully really relevant to the work that you're doing. That's something that we definitely want to tee up is at the end, or if there is questions, we have got a team of people sort of behind the scenes, if you like, that's seeing the questions that are coming up. So if you want to put any questions in the chat box as we're going along, I'm not sure we can answer them all, but we'll certainly get a bit of a taste and a flavour of the questions. And if there's some similar themes that's going off, we'll deal with those similar themes. So we'll get a bit of a steer from some of the lads that's behind the scenes and helping us. At the end, we will kind of have. We'd be really interested to find out sort of what the key messages are for you. I think we've got quite a bit of content that we want to talk about. So some of it will probably be will resonate more with you than other bits. But let's see how we go. And see what we've got. So I'm Ian. If you don't know us, we've got Tom Curtis with us and Geriant with us today. So it's probably better for the lads really to explain who they've been working with, and well, I think in the first instance, what's the journey? We've worked together for a little bit of time, the three of us, in different places, but just for the lads to explain sort of how they've got to this point where we are today. So Tom, I don't know if you want to fire us off and get us started.
Yeah, I can do. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom Curtis. I've been working with the FA for nearly, I suppose, coming up 6 years now. I suppose my background is I used to play a bit of football. I was a pro for sort of 17 years, played in the most levels apart from the top level, so from the championship down to the conference. Kept going as much as I could, and eventually retired around 35, 36. I've coached Loughborough University. I was there for 4 years. Combined that with coaching at Derby's Academy and Forest Academy. I then managed to get a job in the Caribbean, so I coached in the Caribbean for a couple of years as a technical director. Then came back, worked at Bristol Rovers Academy as the academy manager, and then got the job at the FA and was an FA YCD for 4 years, 4.5 years, and I sort of combined that with working with the England under-15s program with a guy called Kevin Betsy, and more recently a guy called Justin Cochran. I'm currently a national specialist coach and work predominantly with the 16s age group. So that's me.
Thanks, man. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Geriant Twose. A bit of my background: I was at Cardiff City for 15 years, working within the academy right through the phases up to the 23s. And the past 7 years, I've been at the FA. My main role, similar to TC's previous role, is FA YCD, which involves us working with the professional clubs in the men's game, helping the coaches in situ really around one, coach education, and two, they bespoke technical and coaching programs. During that time, again, I've been fortunate to work with the men's under 15 squad for the season, taking part in the talent ID camps, and then head coach in a part-time capacity against 2 fixtures against USA. And since 2016, I've been the first team coach with the senior women's first team, the Lionesses, and had some good tournament experience in terms of I've done 3 She Believes tournaments. I did the Euros in 2017 and the World Cup in 2019. And I'm really fortunate, I guess, that my role has given me experience in both the men's and women's games at performance and development levels. And coupled with the coach education, it's given me really a good insight really into player development, and something that I'm always trying to wrestle with is how the three interlink to develop players, and it's certainly something that I want to try and focus on in this webinar, and getting your guys' thoughts, as Batey said, making it real to your environment. So I know I'd like to really focus on the player development aspect, and now as coaches, we support decision making in the players at all the levels, and certainly when they're under pressure in tournament football. So that's me, guys. I look forward to spending the next 90 minutes with you.
Yeah. Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, my background's a little bit different. I think mine's in sort of three different avenues. I've been sort of in coaching and coach education for 30 years. Spent 10 or 15 years really around soccer schools when there wasn't much sort of coaching going on, really. Sort of across the board. And that was at Bobby Charlton's, then with Man United, which gives a really good sort of sounding in working with children and schools work. I spent 10 years at Bolton as in recruitment and as a part-time coach, and then full-time as assistant academy manager. And then I've been at the FA now for 11 years, doing one of the regional jobs in the Northwest, which was predominantly around the grassroots game. And then sort of moved across into, for the last 5 years, was involved with futsal, quite heavily in driving the head coach education program, and then being involved with some teams there as well. So at the minute, I'm kind of trying to shape working with the lads in the FAYCD team. So it's kind of moved back into football, or more football based than from futsal. So a little bit different. And I think, it's you look back and a lot of the work is, or some of the work was, or some of the really rewarding stuff has been following my own son. He's in his 20s now, and he's sort of played futsal, he coaches now, but then follow him through grassroots and taking the team through grassroots from under 7s all the way through to under 18s was really quite a challenging, but it's been a good part of the learning for me. So I think you can probably pick up from the three of us. There's some different experiences that we bring to the party, but we've all ended up kind of working with different teams, as we've kind of touched on. I don't know, Tom, do you want to just dig a bit deeper into sort of share with us who, a bit more on the background on the 16s, where it all fits in the big plan?
Yeah, do you want to flick forward a slide, Batey? I suppose in terms of go on forward, mate. One more.
Go on.
Yeah, in terms of where I guess our program fits for the 16s. I suppose from an organisational point of view, the 15s and the 16s really is a time for us as coaches to be finding out a little bit more about the players at, I suppose, our disposal. So it's that's what essentially the 15s and the 16s year is. It's what we call a talent ID year. So predominantly we're trying to find out as much as we can about the players in our year, and I suppose our program reflects that in many ways. But also what we're trying to do is sort of build towards Euros. So in the under 17s year, every year there's a European Championship. So this year, myself and Justin Cochran, the head coach, will have moved from 1 year to the next, from 15s to 16s to hopefully 17s, with the same group, to take that group into a competition, the European Championships at the end of in May next year. So that's the plan. Also, we're looking off this year to, it's a World Cup year for us, so potentially, should we get to the Euros, and should we get to the should we do well enough in the Euros, we'll be part of a group that could potentially go to a World Cup at under 17s, under 18s level. So really exciting time. But I suppose as well, as part of the broader picture, is essentially we're trying to provide these young players, these players that we've identified that have potential, to give them some sort of international experience with the international tournament experience that will help them, I suppose, flourish, hopefully under Gareth and the senior team at some point. So I suppose the rationale behind our particular program is sort of multi-layered. So we've got the broad picture where we're trying to complement the existing experiences they have with the clubs. Clearly, there's some fantastic work going on at the clubs, and the players get an unbelievable experience these days with clubs, both in games and training. And I suppose our program attempts to complement that in an international setting. So yeah, Euros for us in next year. Hopefully World Cup. Should we do well enough, and essentially trying to find more about the players at our disposal in the sort of 15s and 16s age groups.
Yeah. Susan, what about yourself? Is the working with the women's team, is the sort of what's the backstory behind sort of your involvement with them at the moment, and how you've got involved and where things are going?
But I like I say, been involved with many of these players and staff now since 2016, and I've been really fortunate to build some fantastic relationships with the players and the staff. And when you talk about tournament football, we spend a lot of time together. So that side of the role is really important. Building relationships to certainly develop players. In amongst that time, it's been really good that we've had younger players come into the squad as well. In amongst the senior players, and I have to say that I'm not directly involved in the pathway because of my other role in terms of my FAYCD role. So a lot of my support is just on camp. But the younger players who've come in through the squad, through the pathway, have been an absolute credit to the pathway, and it's obviously doing a fantastic job, and that's part of our objectives, I guess. We are a senior team. At the end of the day, we want to go and win tournaments. That's always the ultimate goal. But within trying to win those tournaments, we want to do it within our playing style. So we massively back the players to go and express themselves. And make decisions in games based around our style, which we think suits a development program at a performance and development stage. And when the younger players come into that program, as we hopefully chat as we go on through this webinar, how we produce our playing style and the consistent messages in that playing style should allow these young players to flourish, and it certainly has when they've come on camp with us. And if you talk about any camp objectives that we have, feels massive on enjoyment. We have to enjoy camp. We have to enjoy each other's company. We have to enjoy football. And if we're going to play the way we want to play, what comes with that is this this unwavering belief in how we want to do it, and go back to relationships building. That's really important. To get these players trust to go and express themselves. When they come out through the development squads into that performance environment. In terms of journeys, if you look, there's a roadmap there leading up to the World Cup. I think it's a good example of we in any camp that we go on, our first priority is to embed our principles and always stick to playing our way. And if you look at one of my first involvement, in terms of the World Cup campaign, was the Wales fixture, which was a must-win game. But it was a must-win game in terms of we're still going to play our style. So the objectives are no different. We're going to be it's a pressure game. We're going to play our way. Then we win the game, go away 3 days later, play Kazakhstan, and play a lot of the younger players who step in and do absolutely fantastic. We then use the games program to again test and embed that playing style, and then leading up to the She Believes before the World Cup in 2019, really stress it. So really stress our playing style, and can we live and breathe it under severe pressure. And amongst that, can we rotate the squad and have total trust in everybody within that squad? I know, and that's certainly something that we did that year. I think we made 8 changes for the finally decided game against Japan, and again, younger, less experienced players stepped in and did fantastic for us. So, it's really that blend of performing on the big stage, trying to win medals, but playing our way to our stylish and enjoyable style of football, and a style of football that promotes youth development. In terms of tournaments, we also use tournaments to prepare future players who are going to come into the squad, as TC was talking about there. So in 2019, Lauren Hemp, for example, came as a training player for us and started both games in 2020. And that's been something that behind the scenes, I know the pathway coaches and the first team coaches are working hard on to get that link, to get this pathway through for these talented young players to get into first team football.
So what we're going to do, Beatty, I'm right on. This afternoon we're going to try and discuss a number of things, I suppose, in relation to our own context. So I jumped ahead a little bit there. So what we're going to try and do, everyone, is try and have a little bit of a discussion around those 5 subject areas in relation to our particular context. So me with the 16s, Beatty with the partials, and obviously Twose with the women's seniors. So I jumped ahead a little bit and started to talk about like the objectives for the 16s program, and we'll talk a little bit about our approach to planning, and then I guess we'll talk about how we address the needs of the players. We'll talk a little bit about how we plan for games, how we review games and training whilst we're on camp, and then clearly how we review what we've done, and how that review, I suppose, leads to the next plan. So they're the sort of 5 things we're going to have a go at chatting about, and we'll all be sort of the same, but I guess slightly different. So in terms of you, Beatty, what would your sort of objectives be for tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, because I've been kind of involved in a couple of different squads, really. I've been involved with the partials for around about over 9 years. And then I've sort of the last 4 years I was involved with the mainstream futsal team as well. So the partials play futsal. So being involved with 2 squads has been terrific. I think it's the partials I'm mainly going to talk about today, because we've come to the end of a period where we've had sort of Steve Daly's taking on the team. He was a captain that's been involved with the team for over 20 years and about 140 caps. So he's decided to retire, and it was the perfect time to hand that over. So that was the time has been really good. But sort of our objectives changed from when we took over. I was sort of the assistant for a couple of years, then I've took the team for 7 years, and at the start of that, we played in a World Cup in Japan with pretty much Steve and a group of teenagers, or certainly players that were sort of 20 years and younger, most in the teens. And at that point, it was quite exciting, really, because you thought, if you can see this through, what can we achieve with a group? And at this first, it was around sort of trying to can we compete. But in the last sort of 4 tournaments, we have a tournament a year. We've kind of got on the podium each time, and we've appeared in the last 2 World Cup finals. So what started out as kind of, it felt like a bit of a learning journey. Now there's a real expectation that we're going into to win tournaments, which is really exciting. And I think there's a real competitive edge of that, where we're knocking on the door. But then at the same time, one of the key things we set out to do is build a continuous. It's saying what you're touching on. You want to build a continuous production line of players, which for us is 1 or 2 extra lads joining in the squad each year. Yeah. Because the playing pool is quite small. So retaining players, and then I think what we've always had an eye on is making sure that when the players come out the other end, that so when Steve was retiring, we've worked on this for probably 4 or 5 years, that he was the man to take over, because there's like I don't know, it feels like a gladiatorial sort of element to it, and you want the gladiators to then lead the rest of the team, and it's that's critical for us. And I think part of the whole clearly the FA is strong. We talk about a for all message and a unite the game, inspire the nation, and it's no different in the women's game than the men's game and in disability. That we want to take those messages with us all the time, and the lads carry the can really well. To by doing so well is inspiring lots more sort of partially sighted players and other disability players to pick up the game and play. Yeah. But the culture now is about winning. The lads have a belief. We go into tournaments where a team that could finish second one year ends up 7th or 8th. The following time out, it's really tight. Yeah. But with it's I guess we're a little bit different because we're part-time athletes. The players are part-time. As opposed to I guess in sort of the women's game now, the full time. The 16s are in effect kind of in a full time environment and with a real focus on that.
I suppose for us, like one of the just jumping in like on your stuff. One of our objectives and one of our challenges, I guess, which would be the same for you too, would be, the players come from different clubs. So we've got players coming from all over the country, from a whole host of different clubs. They play in subtly different ways, subtly different styles, have different backgrounds. And I suppose one of the objectives for us in the 15s and the 16s and right throughout the pathway is to, for us to find out a little bit more about the players, but also for them to find out a little bit more about us. So we have England teams play hopefully playing in a similar way. And so we adhere to a number of sort of playing principles. Hopefully all the England teams play in a similar sort of style. So I guess one of our objectives for all of our tournaments would be to sort of bring a group of players from different backgrounds who are used to playing in slightly different ways together to play in a similar way. So I guess that would be quite high up on our list of objectives when we're thinking about planning a camp or a tournament. So all our decisions or a lot of our decisions would be, I suppose, shaped by that objective. So we'd have a number of sort of technical, tactical goals, objectives in terms of how we want to play and what sorts of things we want to work on in this particular tournament. And we decide that as a group, really. So I mentioned Justin's a head coach, and he clearly coordinates all this stuff, and is the top man, the head man. But he's very good at, I suppose, involving the whole team. So we would have a number of meetings leading up to camps to decide what our objectives, not only in the tech team, but what our objectives across the multidisciplinary team would be. And that would fall in line with, yes, playing style, but also, I suppose, other things in terms of getting the players to understand what goes on, or get them used to what goes on with England, and get them used to each other, and get them used to coming together in a what sometimes is I suppose a new and different environment for people. Would that be the same with you guys?
Yeah. The two things I just sort of picked up from what you're talking about. When you're talking about, first of all, basically, inspiring the next generation. Certainly, watching the work that goes on behind the scenes when I'm on camp is humbling. The dedication the players put into it, and the staff behind the scenes in terms of media and marketing is fantastic. And the players have always got time. They've always got time to promote the next generation and to meet them and to put stuff online and engage with younger players. And listen, of course, the performances, the results, and the crowd figures will help that as well. But a lot of the unseen stuff that goes on with the players is fantastic. And while you were touching on there, TC, around style, I think it is really important. The players do come on international camp with different playing styles and different playing philosophies with their clubs. How we refine our style and simplify our style. Firstly, for players to understand it, so we can be consistent with it. And we touch on this as we go through the presentation. But also, like I said, for the younger players coming through, we're really keen at that. when we do look at our playing style, the tactical framework supports it. It doesn't override decision making, if that makes sense. And we really have to get, certainly from an in-possession point of view, get that balance right, in terms of what it looks like. So the tactical framework and the preparation that we put in place has got to be managed. It doesn't override decision making. It supports decision making. And and that need for young players to come into the squad and go and express themselves and get in the ball and don't worry about mistakes and be supported by staff and senior players around it is massive for us.
Yeah.
And what's the sort of focus across the four corners, for using that as a model? Because I think it does break it down. Is that something you'd do? You'd pin down particular areas across different corners and have a focus on that. Is that something that's pre-planned? And
yeah, I think again, like Tuesday's saying, we wouldn't be different to the girls' team in that we'd have players coming into the group cold, new to the group, and we'd also have players that had been with us for a number of games and a number of tournaments that you could classify, I guess, as a little bit more experienced. So part of our planning, we'd have to take that into account. These experiences need to be enjoyable, challenging, fun for the players, and that's again something that the head coach is really hot on. The environment that we try and create needs to be fun. It needs to be enjoyable, but it needs to be challenging as well, because I think that the best players really enjoy that, and I guess that's our responsibility as England coaches as well, to make it difficult, make it challenging. So in terms of how we try and help those new players coming into the program, I suppose we try and involve the more experienced players. And I guess Tuesday, we've had chats before about you do similar stuff. So the more experienced players in our group have been fantastic, helping the younger, less experienced players coming into the group. So we'll give them responsibility to talk to the newer players about some of the language we use, what happens during the training sessions, what sort of recovery procedures do we use, and again, I guess that's coach crafted in a way, in that we'll give the older players some responsibility to do that, but we are trying to create an environment where the players are able to help each other. I don't know what you think, Susie. Is that something that you do as well?
100%. And when you talk about the culture, we try and live by our values. So if a new player, a new member of staff comes into the squad, the initial welcome meeting with the players and staff is really important.
Yeah.
And we theme our camps around our values, So, for example, you might have a camp based around togetherness, and through that camp, people will bring forward examples of players or staff exhibiting, what togetherness looks like, whether it's on the field or off the field. But in terms of that environment, you mentioned it being challenging. It has to be, it's elite football at the end of the day. But along with that challenge aspect to the players comes a high level of support. So we have to keep supporting these players. We've also got to keep supporting them, and the senior players are brilliant at doing that. I have to say, they will challenge the young players and stretch them, and vice versa. The young players come up and we tell them, go and express yourself. You're not here to make up numbers. Go and make an impact, and they do. So it creates a really really competitive environment. But that challenge with the support behind it is so important.
Yeah. So the planning, I suppose. Sorry, Beatty, you're talking about like the planning across the four corners. That social aspect is extremely important. Because it needs to be a challenging environment, but also spending lots of time. Have you still got me? Yeah. Because the players are spending lots of time. Because the players are spending lots of time together in this sort of tournament scenario, and if we go away to, hopefully, if we're fortunate enough to qualify for the Euros, we could be away for sort of 2-3 weeks. So the players need to, I suppose, develop good relationships with each other, but also learn how to be around each other, learn how to manage themselves, learn how to to be around a tournament. So I guess, again, in terms of planning for the, if you want to if you want to talk about a four corner approach, if you're planning for that social corner, I think it's critical for us to take those sorts of things into consideration.
What kind of work do you, BT? What kind of work do you do for new players into the squad?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've got Steve was kind of pushing 40 when he's retired, and you've got lads that are coming through that are 16 and 17, and you're expecting them to play against, people that have been seasoned players, and it's going to be in a really competitive place. So I think we've been lucky. We've had 3 or 4 staff that have been together for 7 or 8 years and been part of the group, and a lot of the core of the group now, when we look back to where we were, I think in 2013, it seems to be the same. People, the core is very much the same. That's been through some shared experiences, and then anybody new coming in now, whether that's staff or whether it's new players, there's kind of things that are just, and I guess it's kind of cultural that you work in a particular way that's getting you some success, and then other people, the new people that come in, it kind of they're feeding off the existing players, and there's, I guess, because the lads are part-time, when they come into being England players, it's different. That they are England players for a 2-week period, and the lads talk about that. They're not teaching assistants, they're not leading Steve is he leads a department in the council, so. But when he comes on camp and goes into tournament, now he's an England player, and it's different. And they recognise that real opportunity of being together. And I think they make sure that they maximise those opportunities, because they realise it's for 2 weeks of the year that they've got that real period of focus, and it takes them away from whatever from their other work and some of the stresses of life that they're involved with. But I think we do look at it across the 4 corners massively. The big one we talk about is it's like a roller coaster. Tournaments are really like a roller coaster. The highs are quite often quite high, and the lows can be really quite low, and you kind of need to level that off. And that's stuck with there's going to be good times in the period. There's going to be some pretty the bad times, but they might not be as bad as what you expect. So we know it's never a straightforward path of is doing as well as getting. If you're going to get to the final, there's going to be some moments where it's really tight. There's going to be probably one game where you've had a real wobble. There's probably one game where you're going to be outstanding and you really hit some form. But understanding that actually, it's about the next game, the next game, the next game, and that's something we've talked about a lot.
How do you
plan around that?
In the planning, how do you decide sort of what tech stuff to do?
Yeah, it's funny actually. We went into the last tournament without. We'd got a lad, Paul McHugh, he'd been Golden Boot at the last 2 tournaments, and he'd done his cruciate. So we were without him, and he really links the play up for us. And another lad who linked the play up couldn't play for one reason or another. So from a tech point of view, what we looked at was what we had at our disposal as a real strength, and we had 2 top men, 2 pivots that were going to be a handful. One was probably going to be the best pivot in the tournament, so in Tom Lamb. So we had to alter we developed quite a fluid way of playing, which we developed the last 2 or 3 tournaments. We'd come on leaps and bounds, but without our main 2 link-up men, we've had to change how we play. So I think you need an adaptability in looking at the personnel that you've got.
Yeah.
That's going to do that. And I think with Jez and Paul as well, they were really athletic, and with out of possession, we felt we were going into teams as the fittest team. So we felt we'd use our futsal for people. You can use your force quite effectively. So we'd set up where we could really benefit from pressing all game if we needed to. And the first time we got to the World Cup final, we were pretty much wearing teams down out of possession. But then suddenly, we looked at it, and we've got a couple of older players in the team. We haven't got the players that are going to link it up, so we can't press as much as we wanted to. We probably couldn't build the play up as much as we wanted to. So you've got to adapt, and that we knew we were going to be missing these couple of players going into the last one. So the camps moving into the tournament, we started to address these things and look at a different way of playing. And I think you need that adaptability, sometimes from game to game. And it was quite handy having a bit of a run in and notice that we were going to be without those certain players. But there is a clear plan. I think you want to hit the tournament where the players and the staff have got a bit of a, you've got a clear way of playing that's building on your strengths. And then I think also recognising, some of the weakness, some of the places in the other teams that you can go and exploit.
That's the question, fellas, from the floor about. So you've spoken about this plan, the England DNA, your principles, your way of playing. So take a scenario that you're 2-0 down with 20 minutes to go in a tournament. Does that change the plan? What does that look like? Yeah,
I mean, it's quite interesting. So, and this is something we did with the partially sighted lads, and also in mainstream futsal. We have quite because you've got different groups of players that you could utilise at any one time. In mainstream lads, you've got 12 outfield for sort of 4 outfield slots, and you can change them at any second. So we do have a list of scenarios that's in like for want of a playbook, that actually, if things aren't going right, you can adapt your plan. And that plan in a futsal game could change. Could be more than 10 times. The scenarios are changing in the game. And I think there's a little bit more flexibility in futsal than perhaps. That's one of my learnings coming back to football. You can't change it as much, which as a coach, it's quite tiring actually, because you've got all these options at your disposal. But there were scenarios that we'd worked on in the camps running up to competition. So, we would get certain teams to play in certain ways. We would play extra time at the end of games to suit us that might come, or to allow us to play with a fly keeper. So we got to practice the scenarios in real life game day settings before we went to tournament, which I know some clubs are using that now, in their junior programs in the academies. Lads, I don't know what you're thinking is anything similar to that.
So, players fundamentally need to be adaptable, don't they? Because the game is a game that offers different challenges every time you play it. So, if we're in it to win tournaments or develop players, then clearly I think players having the ability to be adaptable is absolutely fundamental. In terms of the planning for different scenarios during a game and the consideration we give to those sorts of things, these are the sorts of things that keep us up all night on tournaments, planning the what ifs. So we'll be. It's great. It's some great coaching football discussion when you are talking with a group of coaches about, well, what happens if this happens, and what if we're 2-0 down with 20 minutes to go? What happens if this guy goes down injured? What happens if they play in this particular system? And this is, I guess, for me personally, these are the conversations we live. You can, I think, from personal experience, you can get yourself into a tiz. And you can get yourself into a situation when you've got so many things flushing around your head that you can almost be paralyzed by your own thoughts. So one of the processes that we've tried to do over the last couple of years is to start to write down some what if scenarios in our what we call our. So before the game, we'll have things like our set play, structure, our organisation. But part of our players back or our match pack would be a set of what ifs. So what happens if we are 2-0 down or with 20 minutes to go? And I suppose the stuff that goes into those what ifs, it might be subtle tactical changes, it might be subtle sort of system changes, it might be personnel changes. But I think fundamentally, again, we'd stick to our playing principles. So playing for England, I guess you've got a responsibility to play in a particular way. And we'll have some general sort of whole team principles that we would certainly adhere to. But that does not mean to say that the players can't be adaptable, and we can't change things like systems and personnel. It's about winning the games. Again, for us, we'd be no different to the senior women's team or the partials. We want to win the games that we're involved in. So that would be a big part of our sort of take on that question. Twose, any different?
Yeah, not really similar. I find this discussion fascinating. From my work with the senior women's team at performance level, but also working within the academies. Academies are developing philosophies and styles of play, which are really important to the play development. The balance of, like I mentioned earlier, the tactical structure that goes underneath it to support that decision making and not override it is really important. And also the reason behind your style. Why is the style your style? So for me, our style, like I said earlier, is one, it's going to help us win games, and two, we think it aids player development. So when we're chasing games and in high pressure games, we don't come away from our style. There might be adaptations within it in terms of your shape or personnel or whatever, but actually the style we back is the bit that's going to win us the game. And I ask that question a lot of times to the coaches in the academies: is if this is your style, why is it? Why is it your style? What does it do? And if it's something that you absolutely believe in, because it's the best way to develop players, and potentially win more games, because at all levels, players want to win games. Then why come away from it at the most critical time? So, this element of variety in the games program in academy football, which is fantastic, and variety in the performance, no levels, that you're exposing these players to different environments where we put in the principles and the strain, because that's the time when we got to live our beliefs and live our principles, not come away from it. And we were big on that, building right up to the World Cup. It was all about, listen, we back you to go and play your way. You're good enough to go and do it. And if we do it well, if we're better at being us, we win more games, And we've done, a couple of things leading the tournament, similar to what Beatty was talking about. Firstly, in terms of scenario work, which I think is really important. When do we practice this type of work? We have limited opportunity really to practice that in the tournament setting in terms of our games program, but there will be times where we may focus more on developing our style in terms of games leading up to a tournament. So I think that was really beneficial for us.
We've I don't know about you, but we've played lots of sort of different types of teams so far this year. So each team seems to have thrown at us a different type of challenge. So I guess examples for us would be, we played against Mexico out in Spain just before Christmas, and they were really good 1v1, really good at individually taking a hit, being very physical, taking a foul, stopping the game a lot. And that was something that many of the lads hadn't come across before. And I suppose for us in our context, providing those, like I said at the start, those additional sort of international experiences, maybe some experiences they've not come across before, is a really valuable way of preparing these young players for the challenges that they'll inevitably come across later on down the pathway. So I think for us, you talk about scenarios in training. I think that's great, but I think that the variety of the planning in terms of the different sorts of games that our players certainly are able to experience is a really valuable way of doing that. And I guess you'll be no different.
No, 100%, TC, and that's my point really, in terms of the games that we'll put together. We'll touch on this a bit later in the conversation, but we look at types of opposition that allow us to develop different aspects of our style. So what teams might play a high line where we can start stretching, recognizing opportunities in behind. When we play Brazil, it's quite open, so there's loads of opportunities to exploit space in between, and obviously the session up to that. The 11-11 scenario work, I agree with you, right, in terms of the training stuff. The key to it is that you have to get the environment right. Now, we had an 11-11 training match, 11-11 in St. George's before the World Cup. And the way we framed it and set it up, and the way the players committed themselves to it was fantastic. And it was as close to an international game as you get, even in terms of the figures that were coming back from from the S&C in terms of, you know, the intensity of the game, etc. And what was really important within it was sort of dual outcomes. You know, we were stressing ourselves in terms of our playing style. How we lived to our playing style. Both teams were playing a similar way. But then when they were fatigued, we did some scenario work. So, you know, if a team's chasing the game, if a team's holding on to the game. And then the most important thing, I think, TC, is review of it. So getting back in the classroom and sitting down the players and going through the footage and looking at key decisions that they made in those games when they were under pressure. Now, was it relative to the pressure of playing a World Cup semi-final? No. But I think you can ramp up the intensity if you prepare it right, definitely. And like I say, those games were fantastic for us, really challenging our principles in intense situations. I guess when you are chasing the game or trying to win under pressure.
Yeah, we're in a fortunate position that we. I was just going to say we're in a fortunate position. We can play against sighted teams before we go into tournament, which is it's like overstressing the players. So when you go into the tournament, it's actually easier than when you're going. But choosing who you're going to play, so you know you can have, and in the I know a lot of the academies are doing this now. That they're sort of ranking games about games that are going to be really, really tough, and you might actually get a bit of a spanking. And then there's other games where you should win quite comfortably, and then there's some games it's going to be nip and tuck, and can you get yourself over the line in them games? And I think that links into some of that from a coach's point of view. You're looking before you go into tournament. I've got kind of a development bit. I'm trying to look to see which players are, which of the players on the fringe are really showing something. Some of your more experienced players, who are your leaders, who to take the others with them. Do you need who's best for which situation? And we use that as a real key part of our training program. It's a chance for people to go toe to toe and get into battle, but really understanding what we're going to get from the games. And sometimes we share that with the lads about how tough it's going to be. Sometimes we don't, to see how they react. But that's been the players seem to really enjoy that part of it. Just sort of building out. Go on.
I was just going to ask how you.
Sorry, mate.
So you've spoken quite a bit about obviously what is success, and you've mentioned winning at various points and being really competitive. How do you balance getting results in the here and now with the development of players for the future?
I was going to just jump.
Go on, Susie. You go. You go.
That's what I was just going to jump on this. Really, really important. Listen, don't get mixed messages here. The winning never overrides development. 100%. And certainly with with working in academy football, when we're putting these younger players, especially into these tournaments, we have to understand where they're at. They get things wrong. They make poor decisions under pressure, etc. But the young players, even young players coming into senior football are still young players. We have to be aware of that when we get in variety in this games programs and we stress in the players. As coaches, we've got to be good enough to deal with it as well. So I think the coach education piece is massive. I think it's easy to put players into these stressful situations and then judge them. But actually, that stressful situation is just there as part of their development. The key role to our role, to us as a coach, then, is how we support them. How we support them in those pressure situations. So it's an age-old argument. This winning redevelopment, and for me, it's always a development. But listen, just the players will always want to win football matches, and that's not a bad thing at any age. As a coach, it's our skill set really to recognise how we develop them in those situations.
Yeah, I guess the tournaments. No one goes into a tournament thinking, right, we're not gonna try and win this particular tournament. But like Tudi's saying, they're learning opportunities, aren't they, for everyone, whether you're a senior player, whether you're a junior player. If you don't do so well in the game, that for me is a learning opportunity. And like Tuzi was saying, the critical thing would be how you get better, how you who you review with, what do you talk about, and how that shapes what you're going to do next, whether that's a training session, whether that's the next game. But we all go into the tournaments trying to win, and I guess winning is part of development's part of winning.
It's quite a big thing about the cap accumulation. I think when we look back, when we've started to get success, people have been through situations before, and I don't think it's. I think it's. I know when Dan Ashworth was in, there was a real push to get players, whether it was back us up here, Tom, if this is right, about making sure players were getting opportunities with younger age groups. So when they're coming into the senior squad, they've built up that sort of.
Undoubtedly, we're in the business of providing experiences, aren't we? That's what the aim of the program is, and certainly being able to reference experiences. So I guess as we've moved on with our particular, with the particular group of players we're working with at the moment. So if we're preparing for the next game, we're probably referencing some of the stuff that happened in the last game, whether that's good, whether that's indifferent, whether that's something we decided we need to get better at. So yeah, I'm with you. We need, we are in the business of providing different experiences for guys that we've identified have potential to be footballers, and hopefully be international footballers.
Yeah.
TC and Beatty, can I just ask? Obviously, moving on to meeting the needs of the players, how this impacts on your recruitment of players into your group and fitting within that existing culture you've got.
I suppose in terms of meeting the needs of the players, the players are always at the centre of our thinking. So I mean, I've myself, and I've nicked that model actually off somebody else, but that would be the little model in the top left hand corner. That would be, I suppose, something we would use for our planning and our delivery and our review around everything we do. So everything we do, we would consider the decisions we make around coaching, decisions we make around organisation, the decisions we make around sort of workshop delivery would have a number of considerations. So I guess first and foremost would be the players that are in. We'd also try to think about, well, what are we actually trying to get them better at? So that might be the coaching points. We then that would therefore influence the sorts of practices we were going to deliver, and that might be a practice on the pitch, and it might be a practice off the pitch, and then also we start to think about how we're going to deliver, how are we going to do it. So are we going to tell? Are we going to get the players to find out themselves? So whenever we're thinking about designing a practice or a workshop or putting together a camp, these are the sorts of things that I suppose shape what ends up happening. So thoughts on that? Definitely who's going to be involved. Definitely what are we trying to get them better at, and then essentially how are we going to do it. And then the other stuff to think about would be, well, what's come before? What's the context? What experiences the players had already? What tournaments have we been through already? And then the other thing would be, well, what we're going to next. So in terms of meeting the players, definitely the players are really sort of centered around all our decisions. I don't know if that sort of explains anything, or was that total gump? What do you think, Beatty?
Yeah, no, it's we definitely were the same. I think we've got some real significance in difference in sort of the age and where people are coming at and what they're bringing with them when they come onto camp. And I think, and we have quite a limited time. So we're huge on making sure the individuals right. If we can get all the individuals right, then we know we're going to fire as a team. And some of that is, and a lot of that, is off in the site corner, in the social corner. So we've got some lads with young families. So how do we deal with them? How do we take care of them? You've got lads making debuts and playing in the first tournament. You've got other lads at the end that desperate that they don't break down in the tournament. So you've got to look at this in tournament really individually. And I guess we're fortunate because the ratio of staff to players is really quite high. So a lot of the work we're doing in camp is kind of one-to-one, and we're playing games daily and sort of in 1 day with 1 day gaps sometimes if we're lucky. So we meet quickly after games to make sure that the staff are tasked about who we're going to support in which way they need. So some players will need some technical support. They might have been trying something in a game and it's not quite worked. Well, actually, we need to get the technical staff around them, or ideally, that player is coming to the staff asking, "Oh, I wasn't quite sure about this, or this didn't work. Why was that?" Or the clipping stuff on Huddle. That was certainly something happened with the mainstream lads. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, isn't it? That, like you said, that all the players come in. They all come in different, don't they? So I'm just sort of thinking about the way we plan sessions, and we talked about this before too. That always has to take into account the individuals within the session. So for us, generally, if we have a 4-day lead into a game, then some players may have played the day before. So we're on match day -4 and we're planning this particular session. Some of our players may have played the day before. Some of our players may not have played for an extended period of time. Some of our players may be coming through a growth injury. Some of our players may have been in before. Some of the players may have not been in before and are new to everything. So I guess when we're planning a training session, then we need to take into account all those sort of parameters. So that will have an influence on, well, what does our practice look like? What sorts of things are we going to go after? How are we going to deliver? Is it going to be command? Are we going to tell them, or are we going to try and get the players to work some stuff out there themselves? So I guess when we're talking about meeting the needs of the players and meeting the needs of the individual, that I guess would be an example. And then the other thing, like you were saying, Beatty, some of the players, in terms of the way we deliver information, we're really fortunate to have the players in tournaments for extended periods of time. So we might only have them for a week out of every 6 weeks, but they're with us 24/7 for that week. So coaching might look different. On pitch, the coaching, the on pitch, the on grass stuff, I guess is only part of the learning in terms of addressing the needs of the players. For us, I guess one of our philosophies would be that coaching happens all the time. So it just doesn't just happen on the pitch. It happens in one-to-ones. It happens in unit meetings. It might happen on a mini pitch in the social room. I guess that for us, that's really important in terms of meeting the needs of the players. So everyone will need something slightly different. Our challenge is yes, getting them to practice on the pitch, but also in terms of delivering information, we've got so many other opportunities in terms of reinforcing some of the stuff we want them to get better at and understand.
Yeah,
how much that's go on, G.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And 100%, coaching is going on all the time. I think, if you're looking at the individual development within the team, the two key things for us has been sort of IDP work before sessions. And I know, the IDP work, lots of clubs do, and it's fantastic. But there's still a thirst for it with the senior players and the development players when they come on camp. So certainly, through the World Cup and it's continued since, the players want as much individual work as they possibly can. Now, in the performance element, you've got to manage that with the medics. You're fighting to get them out of the medical room at times. But they're looking after them because you've got to look after, the games that are coming up, etc., how much they're going to be needed. But the buy-in from the players, from the IDP sessions we do on camp are unbelievable. And the way we try to structure it, I work with anything between 1 and 5 players. And we do a session before training, before the team arrives. Then when the team arrives, they join in after the warm-up. But the key to those sessions are, and it takes a bit of creativity, I guess, is it's got to be specific to the player. When we're doing these IDPs, and I think that's part of the challenge for us as coaches. By working with, performance level or development. What is it? What's the bit that this player needs in terms of their development? And then if they're working with 4 other players in that session who've got different needs, how do you sort of link it together in terms of your practice design? And the one thing that I always try to work on, and I sort of use this model, and I think you can see that the triangle is a basic version really of the full model, but this ensures that whenever we do an IDP work, we're always working towards, it's always going to be about style, no different to a team session. It's always going to be linked to how we're going to play. But in terms of any IDP stuff, it'll be linked to sort of brilliant basics. So what's the technical requirements that we need as a team to play our style? It might be specific to the player or the position, or it might be specific to the game plan coming up, or it might be all three of them. But the point behind, the structure behind this work is whenever they come around to the grass with us as coaches, it's really specific, the work that we're doing with the players. And like I say, the buy-in has been unbelievable, to the point where on camps now we actually have a menu. We have an IDP menu for the week, and the players sign up for it, because otherwise it'd end up like a full team session again.
Twose, the maximising the time you've got is really important, isn't it? I guess we wouldn't have loads of time on the grass with the players before going into the game. And you're talking about players having the opportunity to do IDPs, which is great, and we'd also encourage. I think, well, we take that into account when we're planning our sessions. Sometimes we're constrained maybe a little bit more with time. So I guess the individual nature of the work, we definitely be working with individuals, but often in smaller groups, and often in relation to the stuff that they're going to come up against in a game. So an example, I guess, would be, so I suppose my job title is I'm the out of possession specialist coach. So an example of me working with a group of individuals would be a back four clinic going into a game against Spain, where we've identified that the box cross is going to be a danger for us, and the ball gets checked back out, and maybe an in-swinging cross from a slightly deeper area. So that might be me working with the centre halves about their body position and their approach to the line of the flight of the ball, and making sure they don't go too much towards the ball and go underneath it. So I guess I'm working with individuals there, and I'm working on individual development, but actually it's in relation to the demands of the game that demands of the game that's coming up. Your point, I guess the point about maximising your time with the players, for us it's really important. I guess it is with you two guys as well. We don't get loads of time on the grass, but every time we do go on the grass, we can't waste any time. It needs to be, we need to maximise the time, and it really needs to be addressing the demands of the next game, really.
I agree. And the other thing I think is massively important in terms of tournament football, I want to pick Beatty's brain on this as well. For me, in the tournaments I've been in, the most important session on camp, bar none, is the match day +1. So the players haven't featured in the game before, and it's key that you get that session right. So the balance of it being fun, because you're trying to keep the players uplifted, but actually they recognizing that, listen, they're highly motivated elite athletes, and they come into sessions rightly annoyed, so they want to play in the next game. So how you manage that session for me is absolutely key to managing the group through the tournament. And again, we've had an unbelievable response from the players in terms of these sessions. And I think the key thing to the match day +1 sessions are, you have to have a physical load in there, right? So they have to have that physical punch. They've got to feel valued within it. So it's got to be something to them. It has to be enjoyable and competitive. And I think the key is it's got to link to the next game. So, for example, if we're doing a possession practice or a small-sided game in that match day +1 session, the constraints of the practice are already linking to Spain, for example, if you're playing in 3 days' time, because these players are still a massive part of the squad. And also what we've done at times in the World Cup is film the session and take it back to the team meeting in the afternoon. So the players who've been resting up have seen how hard the players in the morning have worked, So I think, I don't know if Beatty feels, I think those sessions are critical I know we had it to the point where the medics are trying to drag the coaches and the players off the pitch, because it was that intense and that competitive and that much fun, really, And I think it's so important to maintain that culture through the tournament. I don't you think?
Yeah, we're a little bit different. Yeah, no, we're a little bit different because we're similar in some respects, different in others. I mean, in terms of games, we tend to go bounce game day to game day, so we don't really have the match day +1 opportunity to get some stuff out. So there's a different challenge there. So a lot of our stuff in between is around rest and trying to power down. So that is different. But I mean, I'm thinking here is around what we have done is around just picking up what you're saying, Tom, is around. So just sorry, but then if you're going game to game, the issue that you have got on that period between the games is, you've had some players that have performed really well, some that won't have performed particularly well, some that will not have had many minutes, and that will have thought they should have had minutes. And then your big hitters might not have performed. So you've got all this going on that you've got to try and address really, really quickly and get right for the following game day. And that's a massive challenge because you can't just leave somebody. They're going to be uptight. You've got to go and challenge it and try and make sure that they're on track, because tomorrow you need them, because you don't know what the situation is going to be, and that's the job for the whole staff team. And we do pick people off to go and to try and help the individuals that we're anticipating might need help, or the player might come to us and start asking for stuff, and that's kind of the golden ticket.
Yeah.
The thing I'm interested in here, Tom, one thing we had a load of joy with was around sort of, and particularly we did it with the partials, and we did it with the mainstream lads, particularly with the mainstream futsal team, around the goalkeeper coach, myself, and Mike Scabala. Sort of one of us working, I'd probably go out of possession, Scoobs would work in possession, I'd be working with the goalie coach, and again picking up on, we'd think a little bit about how the opposition were going to play. If they were smashing the ball into the far stick, we knew we could set up to deal with those sort of things. But this sort of method of pack coaching, the planning together as a group of coaches to get a load of outputs, for some of it's for groups within, for units within the team. Some of it was specifically for some individuals within the team. We've kind of ploughed on with that for 2 or 3 years and had a load of success. Well, we feel we've had some success, and it did was maximise the time that we had with the players, because we've got such short times.
Yeah, I guess it might be useful to sort of explain how we go about planning for games and sort of who's involved in that process. We would towards the back end of the under-16 year, we started to look at the opposition, as well as clearly focus on our own sort of our strengths, our own playing style. We've started to look at the opposition, myself, Justin, and the other coaches, just to give us an idea of how we can maximise our own strengths. We would then come up with, I suppose, some sort of game plan, where we'd have a number of sort of things that we feel that we need to be good at in each of what we call our sort of 6 zones in order to win the game. So we might have a plan for a pressing strategy. We might have a plan for our out of possession strategy in the middle of the pitch. We might have a plan, like I've just talked about, in the back end of the pitch, about we think that Spain might try and attack us with box crossers. So we'd come up with a set of a set of points in each of those 6 zones, as well as an idea about our strategy in transition. So what does our structure look like when we've got the ball in order to stop a counter attack? What do our recovery strategies look like when we're are we going to go and counter press quickly, or are we going to recover back into shape really quickly when we lose the ball? So we definitely come up with a game plan. And that would happen between a number of coaches. So the head coach, the in-possession coach, the out-of-possession coach, and the goalkeeping coach. We'd all have a real, a good idea and a good knowledge of what our approach to that particular game and a group of games would be. Then I guess that would tailor what our coaching sessions and our workshops might look like. So as Twose said, we're always trying to relate what we're doing to a game plan and our own sort of playing principles. Really important that we maximise our time and give ourselves the best opportunity of affecting the players. And then in terms of delivery in coaching sessions and review of games and review amongst the staff and amongst the players, there'd be a certain division of responsibility. So I would look at the out of possession phases, and then Omar, who's the in possession coach, and Justin, who's the head coach, they'd look at the in possession phase. Goalkeeping coach might look at some defending set plays, and Justin or Omar might look at the out of possession set plays. So there's a balance here between everybody having a real good understanding of the approach, a whole game approach, and then sort of specialists that have a sort of, I suppose, a focus on a particular area. So that's our sort of model, and that would happen in terms of coaching sessions, and it would happen in terms of review amongst the staff as well as with the players. But we're never operating on our own. We're always operating together, if you understand what I mean. So if there's an out of possession focus on one particular day, that's a session that I may lead, but certainly the in possession coach and the goalkeeping coach and the head coach will be working really hard as well. So I think the relationship between the group of coaches is really important, and then the group of coaches being really clear on what the game plan is, what the approach to the game, what the approach to the training sessions are. I think that's fundamental if you're going to have these guys working effectively together and maximise your manpower.
Yeah, I agree with that, mate. And certainly, how you work with the goalkeeper coach is massive as well. When we're planning these sessions. Yeah, the planning for games and opposition is, like I say, we really try to focus on us being us. So what's our style and what the opposition giving us to be the best that we can be. So always respect the opposition, absolutely, because you're playing against some top teams. But we really want the focus to be on that belief that we can play our way. So like we said earlier, what are they giving us to allow us to be us? And I think how we get the support of all the staff, and in particular the analysts. The analysts do a fantastic job in terms of helping us give us an idea of the opposition, which certainly helps shape our practices on the pitch. And then, like we say, our practice design on the grass is going to be based around our principles. But what are they going to give us? So Argentina, for example, if we know that they're going to defend in that low block, we still plan around the six areas of the pitch like you're talking about, TC. But we spend more time in that final third, and then into our playing style, we start sort of investigating. Well, what would control and patience look like in the final third of the pitch, and that's how we would plan whatever opposition we're playing. And I think the key to the style is the style is consistent no matter what part of the pitch that you're in or moments of the game that you're in. The key is design your practices to complement your style and to complement what the opposition are going to give you.
I think what's really go on.
And I think I was just going to say, and I just think in terms of, and I'd be interested again to get Beatty's feedback on this, because I know he has a real quick turnaround in terms of his tournaments. How we try and layer that information to the players there in terms of the off-field stuff is really important. And we need to work off, a match day 3, match day 4, match day 2 model. But the process is the same, where we sort of front load them with an overview at the start of the preparation for the game, and then start diluting it towards the end. So it might be an overview of opposition and how we're going to play. Then it might go into units. Then it might be more individual stuff, and then it might just be picking up players on match day. Depending on their preferences. But in tournament football, we have to be adaptable. So a lot of the pre-planning stuff you were talking about allows us to do that. So if you look at the She Believes, you're always on a match day -2 turnaround, and you're traveling from state to state. In the World Cup, you might have a match day -4, or you might have a match day -3. So you have to be adaptable with how you get that information across to the players. And for it to have absolute clarity, something we started doing on camp, which worked really well, was before it went live to the players, we had to deliver to the coaches. So you deliver your sort of in possession game plan to the staff, and then they pick the bits out with it. So when it goes live to the players, it's bang on the money, or as close as it can be.
That's one thing we've been absolutely clear on is about having clarity of message. You know, in the heat of battle, when it's getting really tight, you've got to be clear. The lads have got to be absolutely clear that they know what's expected of them.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that for us, we build it over time. So when we've had the same lads together for quite a number of years, that really helps. You know, because you can draw back on past experiences and you kind of shortcut. You're not repeating things over and over. I think you're repeating the message. But you're not starting from scratch all the time. You're just layering it up, layering, keep doing the layers. I think the staff being on task as well is critical. You know, especially when you get so many staff, and that we're making sure that the physio's on task with the message, the doctor's on task to work, because the players are canny. The person they will get one-to-one with is probably the physio, and you know, you want the physio to be saying the same thing about, you know, if we're going to go and press the living daylights out of someone, we better have a consistent message across the group that people are going to be ready to go. And I think that starts to spread amongst the group, and that becomes quite powerful, but everybody's got to be saying the same thing, and some of it is a little bit subconscious, but I think you'd only need one chink in the armor, you know, that questioning something and the whole thing falls apart. But that doesn't happen by accident. You know, it's got to be communicated from the head coach, really, through the staff, through the players, so everyone's on the same page.
Basically, I think that thing about clarity of message is really, really important. So I think you end up telling the players the same thing lots and lots of times, but maybe in different ways. So again, when we're on camp, we've got the opportunity to practice on the pitch. We've also got the opportunity to have one-to-ones with people. We've also got the opportunity to do Subutio workshops. We might do work on a mini pitch. We certainly would use lots of video. And generally, you're telling the players it's repetition, but you might be telling the players in slightly different ways every single time. And then I suppose the other point I'd like to make around the planning. You know, the planning sounds really, really complicated, and you know, we might have 3 points in this zone and another 2 points in this zone, and that shapes the training session. But what Justin's really, really good at, the head coach, he's really, really good at bringing all that, wrapping all that message, all those complex messages up in a really sort of simple bundle for the players to understand. So the meetings with the players, the pre-match meetings with the players, might only take 5-6 minutes. But there's so much, you know, he's so good at sort of making all those complex messages really, really simple messages for the players. So, you know, a clarity of message, telling players the same thing lots and lots of different ways, but also making it really, really simple, I think is an important thing to consider.
I massively agree. And, you know, the other thing which I think is really important, but when we're talking about, you know, the planning and the classroom sessions we're doing, you know, we have to get it right on the grass. That's the most important bit. So how we deliver as a group of staff to the players on the grass is massive. It has to have flow. You know, the session, we want to maximize the time. So how we design the practices and transitions between practices, players shouldn't be hanging around. You know, if they go off to get a drink, by the time they come back on, the pitch has already changed. And, you know, we include all the staff in every session. You know, the doc might be collecting the balls. You might have the physio moving the goals. Everybody's involved all the time. But I think to get the messages from that classroom clear onto the pitch is the most important bit in it. And that's the bit you've got to strive to get right.
That's the back to the thing we talked about at the start in terms of making the environment really challenging. So you know, the players, like you said too, I've seen your sessions, the way they move from one practice to the next practice really, really quickly. You know, a lot of the feedback we get from the players is, you know, they really enjoy the intensity, they really enjoy the challenge. we've talked about maximising the time we've got the players on the pitch, and that might mean that the practice runs from one practice to the next practice really, really quickly. So your point about the doctor running around collecting the cones in so that the practice can run really smoothly, that really resonates with me, because I'm the one that tries to run the practice carousel, we call it. So I can see myself sprinting around picking the cones up, so there's no delay for the players. I think that's the
and from the
part
technical,
you'd
you'd have, if it's me, Mace, Bev, and Phil, taking a session, we've all got a part to play all the time. And if you're not physically dealing, with observing, you might be working with different players within the session. But I think it's key. And going back to the style bit, if our messages are constantly consistent, in terms of every constraint we put in a practice links to how we play, whether it's a possession practice, whether it's a small-sided game, whether it's a technical practice, those messages over time are going to sink in. So when you start doing game plan stuff about opposition, you just hand it on to the stuff that you already do.
Yeah, I've just seen a question that Matt, one of the guys behind the scenes, sort of sent through. He's talking about a consistent sort of message throughout the age group with the DNA. I suppose that's what the DNA or the playing style gives us. There are sort of similarities for players as they move through the pathway. What do you think to that too? Because you were involved with the 15s, weren't you, a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Are the messages now similar with the women's team in terms of the DNA and the playing style?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's like I say, it's always going to be ongoing work, but the clearer we can get these messages, the easier it's going to be for the younger players to transfer into the first team, and 100% they're getting similar messages through the pathway, because when they come into our environment, we're talking about the same thing. At the end of the last camp, actually, I think we had 8 of the youngsters, and we did a review with them just on what our messages, how clear are they, what do you understand about our principles, and they knew them. Honestly, they were fantastic. The work they come up with was unbelievable. There's the photo there. That was the actual session. You can see there, and the leading it with some of the younger players. But all the younger players knew. They knew it inside out. So there's obviously a link from the first team down through the pathway.
Fellas, I've got a question for you. You've spoken about creating adaptive experts that can respond to situations. So how in tournament can you filter in that information in terms of your review and your planning into the next games?
Yeah, the review process is an interesting one. So again, I think it's a case of we were reviewing different ways. So it may be a coach-led review where the coaches might sort of sit down, go through the game in relation to their sort of area of focus. So I might look at the out possession, Justin O might look at the in possession, and then we might deliver a set of clips to the players to have a look at and ask for their input. Similarly, we might do that in a different way. So a review of training, for instance, it may be really short and snappy. It may be the goalkeeper coach Terry asking the players to write down things that they need more information and more clarity on. Again, I guess it's for us. I suppose it's providing different, or thinking about different ways to review the games to enhance the players learning, and I suppose every time they learn something and come across a particular situation, they're then able to reference that situation in the subsequent experience. So the review is a really interesting one, and again, I guess everyone's constrained in terms of time. For the tournaments I've been involved in this season, they've generally been game, rest, game, rest, game. So there's not a great deal of time to review, although the review is very, very important in terms of consolidating the learning and the experiences that the players have taken, the learning that the players have taken from the previous game. How have you done it, Bates? Is yours different?
Yeah, no, we try and get a real regular shape and pattern, and we talk about this a lot. So, as soon as the game's finished, we don't really go into any depth with the players. We've got to get into recovery mode really, really quick. And then we start afresh the next day and deal with what's gone on, but then with a real view on planning on the next event, and win or lose, you know, the players know they're not going to get all that much of a response. We'll have a hot sort of debrief for, you know, on court and then shift really quick. But everybody knows that, and it's not me got the that I'm not talking. It's no, that's done and dusted. You know, we've got to go and deal with tomorrow now, or quickly the day after. So, and I think there's something as well about the staff. If you've got to manage your own time as well, because it gets really tiring. You know, you can't be doing 18-hour days, because when it comes to crunch time in the games, you've got to make the right decisions as well. So, you know, you've got to be this sort of, you know, charging up the batteries is as much for the staff as it is for the players. So sharing that workload is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical.
Yeah, I agree. I think the variety to how you do reviews is really important. You know, and I think it's with the academy lads as well, but certainly in terms of World Cup with us, it can be coach-led, it can be player-led. Now, that might be dictated by the circumstances you're in. So, for example, we waited to see which we're going to play in the group stages in World Cup, and it could have been Cameroon, it could have been Chile, it could have been New Zealand. It was going to be New Zealand, and like 90+ minutes, Cameroon score. Then we had to wait till 9 o'clock for Chile to play to see who we were going to end up playing. So the turnaround was really, really quick. So the morning after, as coaches, we led the overview of Cameroon and what they were about, because we wanted to get information into the players early. And again, the analysts had done fantastic work. You know, and they had support from the pathway that we had this information to go and get on hand. But then in the next game against Norway, two things really. You know, before games in, we didn't really want the same type of review. And all the players knew, the Norwegian players, and how they play. So we just mixed it up. So when they walked into the review room, there was no chairs, but just flip charts on the wall. And the players led the review. The players led the game plan, sorry. Unbelievable. They led the review of Cameroon, and then the game plan for the game coming up against Norway. And then obviously we sort of consolidated with our work and our clips to reference it. So I think the variety in how you deliver it is key. But, you know, the reason behind the way you deliver it that way was also really important.
Okay, lads, I'm just really mindful of the time, and I hope the time's gone as quick for everybody as what it has done for us, what it feels like it's gone for us. At the start, I mean, we did talk about some key messages, but obviously people's looking at this from very, very different perspectives, and I think you know, clearly people's going to have. Hopefully, there's been something in here that's sort of resonated with people individually. Just is there any, you know, just quickly, what was anything key from yourselves, you know, that I know from my own perspective, I think that one of the key things that Hope's come across is about sort of really knowing your players and building information into players over a period of time. And by knowing the players, I feel I get more out of them. That'd be one thing that hopefully has come across. Anything from yourselves that, you know, would be sort of key messages for people?
Yeah, for me, mate, it's just the awareness of how we help players decision making. I know that can come through clarity of our playing style, consistency of our messages, through, you know, practice design, how we coach, how we manage games, and then, you know, in addition to that, linked to tournament football, I guess, at all levels, how we then support the players to make those decisions under pressure. And, you know, go back to, you know, the question earlier about, you know, styles and scenario work. You know, just because it's a key game or key moment in the game, you shouldn't come away from your principles. But I think that understanding as coaches at both development and performance level, you know, how do we support players' decision making, and how do we get better at it ourselves to help them is key.
Okay.
You see,
Tom?
Yeah, for me, I suppose building on Twosy's point, the clarity of message sort of jumps out to me, but also I guess the fact that coaching happens all the time. So again, for us in tournaments, maximising the time we get a chance to interact with the players. That for me is coaching. But fundamentally, like Twosy was right to pick me up on, the football is the most important thing. So, you know, getting the football right, getting the practices right, getting the training sessions right, I think gives the players the best chance to perform in the games. So those would be the three things for me.
Brilliant. Okay, lads, thanks for this. Everybody, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I hope there's been something in there that's been useful for people. I think we covered 1 to 4. Not sure we got to point number 5. We've got to get better at our timekeeping, but that's for another day. So, Rambo, is there anything we need to cover before we shut down?
No, I just think I'll echo the comments that a huge thanks to obviously TC, Betty, and Twose for their insight, and I hope it's been really useful, and you've taken loads of key messages away that you can apply in your own context, in your own environment, the club you work in. So, thanks, fellas.
Thanks,
yeah, absolute pleasure. I think the other big message for everywhere is, this is the first of the sort of hot topic webinars. So look out for these. They are going to be on a weekly basis. It's not always us three. In fact, I think it will very rarely be us three, but it'll be different people from across the organiser. After this performance, it definitely won't be us three. There'll be different people from different parts of the FA. Sometimes people from clubs and things that's going to be presenting. So,
I've just shared something for that. So, obviously, the boot room on CPD is where our upcoming webinars will be housed, so you can sign up there, and then obviously we'll share the recording for this on our YouTube page, which will keep getting new content added to. So check out them 2 resources with the links I've just shared.
Brilliant. Thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Cheers.
Thank you.
Take care.